Okay, welcome everybody once again. I hope you had some interesting conversations there, and I'm very curious to hear more about it. Hopefully later in the session. So today we're here discussing working on the SDGs in The Hague. What's next? And we felt that at a Peace and Justice reception there had to be a session explicitly on the SDGs, and especially as The Hague is also a global goal city and home to 4 SDG houses. And I'm very happy to say that of all those houses, and I hope Erik de Baat is here as well, I haven't seen him yet, but of most of the houses at least, we have a representative here today.
Present, Charlotte.
Yeah, great, thanks. Now I can see you on my screen now. So we have Erik de Baat, who is the director of the Peace Palace and the Carnegie Foundation. We're also joined here today by Eline Vermeer, who is the project manager of the VNG International, which is the International Cooperation Agency for the Dutch municipalities. We are also joined by Friso Visser, who is a Deputy Director and Head of Education and Presentation of Museon. And Alex Tayandier, who is the Community and Communications Lead of the Humanity Hub. But also as a city, as we are a global goal city, we have a few representatives from the city as well. So we're joined by Floor Matenaar, who is the Policy Officer, International Affairs at the city. And we're also joined by Ko Santing, who is the Program Manager, Impact City at the Economic Affairs Department at the municipality. And my name is Charlotte. I'm also a Policy Officer at the municipality, but I will be moderating this session here today. And in my work, I come across various topics related to the SDGs. Most of them have something to do with access to justice in The Hague. Well, before we go to the panelists and ask them to give maybe a bit of a better introduction than I did and ask them the first questions, I would also very much like to know who is present with us today. So I will put up a poll. And I hope you can now all see the first one with the question, who are you with us today? And please share a little bit about it. So I can already see that there are a few groups that are well represented and some a little bit less, but I will share the results in a bit. I hope you can now see the results. So the NGO world and governments are quite well represented. Startups and international organizations, a little less. But I would also very much like to know if you or your organization is present in The Hague, because I've noticed in the past days during this reception, and I think it's a bit of a silver lining of this whole pandemic that we're able to share these events with people all over the world. So I'm very curious if there are a few more people from outside The Hague or maybe outside the Netherlands or Europe. And if you want to be more specific, you can share everything in the chat so we can see where you're actually from. But where most of us are from The Hague, well, I guess with a session on SDGs in The Hague, that's quite logical. And then finally, I would like to know how much you work with the SDGs. Perhaps it's the sole purpose of your organization, or you come across it once in a while, or you're here just to learn more about what actually SDGs stands for. And it's also quite diverse, but I think most of you know a little bit already. I think you can now see the results of that. Okay. Let me see. Yeah. Well, then I would very much like to ask the first speaker. And Erik, I would like you to start with introducing yourself a little bit more, tell a little bit about the work your organization is doing and how the SDGs play a role in your work. We have quite a big panel of 6 people, so I would like to ask everybody to keep it brief. Please, no more than 3 minutes, so everybody can speak. Eric, can I give the floor to you?
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you, and to be with, I think, so many who I assume are all believers in the Sustainable Development Goals. I have the privilege to serve as director of the Carnegie Foundation that owns and manages the Peace Palace in The Hague for over five years now. And we were happy that a few years ago, the Peace Palace was officially nominated by the Dutch government as the SDG 16 house, Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions. I think that goal, being ambitious, and especially on that goal, fits The Hague as the international city of peace and justice, and of course also the Peace Palace as its icon. So we want to have an active agenda to promote peace, and I think the SDGs provide an excellent platform, probably the most ambitious peace and social change agenda we've had internationally. However, having said that, we were, of course, also affected by the corona pandemic. And whereas we had staff to also play a role as coordinator of the SDG 16 goal, unfortunately, that colleague is no longer part of our team. So while we have an ambition, we're not in a position to fulfill that ambition currently, even though we want to play an active role. If once again we can meet again live, we would happily open the doors of the Peace Palace for all of you to put forward an ambitious agenda promoting SDG 16 and the cross-cutting other goals. Because I think when we think of the other goals, especially in this time, goals related to health, inequality, poverty, sustainable production, well, you know them all. It's very befitting that they are actively taken up. And I think when the question is what we do in The Hague, I think we could do much more, because if we take a careful look at the programs of the various national political parties, I don't think the SDGs figure quite prominently, not even in the text, let alone in the financial paragraphs. So I think we need to make sure that our engagement is shared, and the knowledge about SDGs is much more widened among those who actually can play a role, both at local, national, and of course with our ambition as a Peace Palace also at international levels. So I look forward to cooperate with as many partners as possible, but also have to say as many partners as we can handle with limited staff.
Of course. Thank you very much, Erik. Elina, can I ask you the same question? So a little bit more introduction of the work you do on the SDGs. That would be great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. Well, hi everyone, I'm Eline Vermeer. I'm a project manager at VNG. The VNG has a campaign which is called the Gemeente voor Global Goals campaign, the Municipalities for SDG campaign. And with that campaign, we support municipalities throughout the Netherlands in the implementation of the SDGs. So what we do is really to translate that international agenda to the Dutch municipal context. And we think this is, well, we've been doing this campaign since 2016, since the beginning of the SDGs, and we will until 2030 arrives. And I think, well, this is so important for us, for the Association of Dutch Municipalities, because a large part of the SDGs are only achieved through the involvement of municipalities. And these SDGs really connect with all the large tasks that municipalities are facing right now, such as, well, sustainability, energy transition, but also inequality, good governance. And what the nice thing about the SDGs is that they really provide that connection between all those different tasks that municipalities are tasked with, and invites to connect with local partners, with citizens in achieving those goals. And we've seen that in a lot of municipalities, the SDGs provide a positive agenda for discussion and dialogue with citizens, that it breaks polarization because it has a positive perspective into the future. And of course, it's a worldwide agenda. So what we do here affects the situation elsewhere and vice versa, which, well, it is necessary to underline that municipalities are part of a bigger whole. And that's something the SDGs do. So we as an association want to support municipalities in this. We provide a lot of information to municipalities about the subject. There are now 100 municipalities that call themselves a global goals municipality, such as the Municipality of The Hague. What we do is also to give brochures, to give coaching conversations, but also to organize events for municipal staff and mayors, aldermen on how to implement the SDGs. So that's how we with our campaign, support local governance in the Netherlands.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eline. Well, I think then I would like to ask Floor, as representing municipality, to share a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte, and also thank you for having me here today. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. My name is Floor Maasnaert. I am the SDG coordinator within the Municipality of The Hague. I work for the International Affairs Department. So I think it's important to mention here that the SDGs are not only a matter that concerns the International Affairs Department, it's obviously much more broader than that. So as you all know, The Hague is known to be the international city of peace and justice. So SDG 16 is an SDG close to our heart. But within the municipality, we work on a broad range of SDGs in various different ways. We therefore have a working group where colleagues from different departments come together to report on the progress they make in working towards achieving the SDGs. And it's a place where we can discuss if and how we can all help each other in making even more progress. And I think I'd like to leave it at that for now.
Great, thank you, Floor. Well, we're also joined by Friso as a representative of Museon. Friso, can you share a little bit?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Friso Visser from Museon in The Hague. Of course, we are a museum for science and culture. You can see the building in the background at the evening. Some of you might have been there. We are a museum that is focusing on families and on school groups. We do receive a lot of visitors per year when we are open, obviously not now. Our main exhibition since 2016 is called One Planet, and One Planet is about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So it's an action-oriented exhibition, which in a way translates the, let's say, the global goals in a way that it is made tangible for our public, for our visitors, so that in a way everybody can see that you can be a hero on your planet. That's the, let's say, the subtitle of the exhibition. So I believe we are quite unique with this in the world. We started this exhibition to build it in 2015 when the Agenda 2030 was, let's say, put out to the world. And we thought that the framework would neatly fit with our purposes in the museum. Our next step will be to not only have our permanent exhibition on the Sustainable Development Goals, but also our more temporary exhibitions. And we will not do it as an exhibition itself. It is called an Expo Festival, meaning that we will have a lot of examples of how the goals can be reached by small initiatives, by nice science and technology achievements that would really be an inspiration for people to work with this. So I think I will leave it with that at the moment.
Great, thank you, Friso. We're also joined by Koos, who can give probably a bit more in perspective from businesses, from startups in The Hague. So Koos, can you share a little bit?
Yes. Yes, I want to. So my name is Koos Santing and I work for the economic department. And in the economic department, yeah, we have a city of peace and justice. We have a lot of international organizations, and also other organizations working on a better world, but we want to add the business part to that and the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's why we founded more than 5 years ago the Impact City program. And it started really as the startup program of the city of The Hague. So we didn't want to be the next tech or Silicon Valley kind of program. We really wanted it to focus to companies that also solve big social problems. If you talk about sustainability. So in that program, actually, the SDGs are a really good framework also for companies to measure their impact. So that's why it's really helpful for us. We actually also now, last year, we also built a database where you can see also in The Hague, for example, there are more than 100 companies working on solving the SDGs, but it's an international database. So that's really helpful also for companies, and hopefully we can have more companies really contributing to solving the Sustainable Development Goals. We want to build the ecosystem with all the parties. So that's more than the entrepreneurs. Everybody that is an impact maker can contribute. For example, if you also talk about finance and the capital, and those companies need, of course, a lot of capital. So it's important that we have more impact investors in the city. That's where we are working really hard. So also with the financial institutions, that they put more money into those companies and in those that are solving big challenges we have as society. So that's our program. And we also do that international, also with other cities in Europe. We have, for example, also now a competition also for impact companies in six cities in Europe. So I leave it with that also.
Great, thank you, Koos. And finally, Alex, can you share a little bit from the perspective from the Humanity Hub? I think the newest SDG house in The Hague.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So my name is Alexandre Andier. I'm the community manager at the Hague Humanity Hub. The hub has 2 locations in The Hague. You can see one of them behind Charlotte right now. She's so lucky to be there. Our beautiful empty space right now. I'm also just around the corner in a different room. So you heard it. The Hague is a city of peace and justice. We all know that, but what does it mean exactly? You have hundreds of organizations, really thousands of individuals working on all sorts of aspects of making this world a better place. From impact startups, like you heard from Koos, to NGOs, international organizations, knowledge institutes, government institutes, and so on. And the Hague Humanity Hub was set up in 2018 to support and strengthen this very diverse ecosystem. I mentioned the city of The Hague being the city of peace and justice. And we heard already peace and justice, SDG 16. But when we polled and we talked to our community, and we also looked into the wider ecosystem here in The Hague, actually all SDGs are represented in major ways in The Hague. All these organizations I mentioned, all these individuals are working every day on not just peace and justice, but also all the other SDGs. So that's why we just launched a few months ago as an SDG house. The Humanity Hub is an SDG house to support even more this ecosystem around SDGs. So to connect and support this collaboration within this ecosystem. And we just launched. We have already a program set up. We are part of the SDG House network, which is a group, a community of SDG houses in the Netherlands. Humanity Hub is part of that, Museon as well, and others. And one of our first projects as a group, as this community, is the SDG traineeship program, and which is basically bringing together Dutch pupils, Dutch students with impact-driven organizations. And I think I will have some more time later on to share a bit more about that program that we just launched.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. I think we have quite a diverse group of people all working on different SDGs, working with different communities. my second question, before I mention it, please, if anyone of the audience, after I've asked the question, also has an idea or wants to mention something, please put it in the chat so we can see your comments as well. So we try to make it as interactive as possible, even though it might feel like you're just sitting alone in front of your screen. So please share anything, any comments on the question. My second question to the panel is, what is the biggest struggle in working towards the achievements of the SDGs right now? And some of you already mentioned, of course, the pandemic, which of course has big implications on working to achieving the SDGs, but which also might make the work in achieving them a little bit different. So I would like to ask you, do you have any lessons you can share with us that you've learned in the past year? Erik, can I start again with you?
Yes, thank you very much for starting with me, because right after my answer, I have to leave the meeting as indicated. What our biggest challenge is apart from the fact that our regular court tasks are to facilitate the courts doing their important work for society at the Peace Palace. Just today, we had a session on Iran versus United States at the Peace Palace, just to mention one of the cases pending. So that is the core task, and this is an additional responsibility that we wanted to take up and take seriously. But first, organizing the capacity, and second, trying to mainstream the agenda in our activities. Those are the real challenges we face, and I think it would be instrumental if altogether we can raise more awareness among society. So the desire to work on the Sustainable Development Goals would grow.
Thank you very much, Erik. Thank you, and thank you for joining for this half hour.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Friso, can I ask you the same question? So what have been the biggest struggle? You also, of course, mentioned the pandemic, and are there any lessons you can share with us?
Yes, well, the most difficult thing about let's say the SDGs is the abbreviation itself. To start with, so global goals is already a little bit more understandable, but we first of all, we used to talk about SDGs amongst those who are already aware. And we find with our public, because we check this, of course, that a lot of families that are coming into our museum, that they are people that already know about living sustainable, and they find it very interesting for their children to educate them and so on. But it's not something which is really top of mind. So the sustainability ideas are top of mind, and some people are already acting on a basis of a sustainable lifestyle, but they are not aware of things that are interconnected. That's the second thing. So the awareness about the SDG movement, let's say, is not there, but also the systemic approach behind the goals is not very top of mind. So that is the second thing. And the third thing is that we try to show people that small steps, if everybody takes a small step for each action, that might help as well. So rather than to talk about these rare disease SDGs, we talk about being a hero on your planet and doing things that really have a meaning and could contribute to a better world in the end.
So trying to make them a little bit smaller and see what you can do in your
Yes.
day-to-day life.
Yes, and have a reference to the local and the global. Yeah. So we always try to show people that there is something going on about one SDG locally, which is an example from, well, let's say around the corner, and something which is happening elsewhere on the world, so that they can make the comparison and see that there is a reference to the SDGs everywhere.
Yeah, thank you. I think also what you said, I always call the SDG bubble. It's always good to remember that we probably all know what we're talking about, but for many people, the SDGs are not really known. Floor, can I ask you the same thing, a biggest struggle and perhaps any lessons learned?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the biggest struggle also in working towards achieving the SDGs is raising awareness and making it more tangible for my colleagues. Because, like you said, Charlotte, probably everyone who is present here today either knows about the SDGs or either works with them or sees the importance of achieving them, but it is indeed a bubble. And I know, at least for my organization, that many colleagues might have a vague idea about what the SDGs are, but that they also portray it as something that is hip and happening and that it doesn't really apply to them or the work that they do. Which is a shame, really, because I know a lot of people within the municipality are actually already working towards achieving them, but they just don't label it that way. So for me, I would like to form a bridge between the SDGs on the one hand and those colleagues on the other hand by making the SDGs more tangible for them.
Great. Thank you, Floor. Koos, can you share your experience in this and perhaps any lessons learned or challenges?
Yes, for us, it is a little bit similar in the business, on the business side, what I see. So of course there's a young generation, and it's also, you see it back in the startup world, that is moving more and more into the direction of the SDGs, and they want to be impact companies. But for us, the challenge is also more and more now to have the more traditional companies, that they become part of the ecosystem. Some of them traditionally also do, like also civil servants, they do already a lot in that area, but they are important also as customers for the smaller companies. So it's really important to have them more involved. Another challenge I see is sometimes with the SDGs, it maybe also comes also a little bit back to what Friso was telling, is that I see sometimes also disconnect between companies really solving issues in abroad, in many international countries, and then the local angle. So really solving issues in The Hague itself. So there's a disconnect sometimes between those two groups of entrepreneurs, which is important to bring together, and also the organizations around them, the investors. I see also still, the investors still have a lot of, many investors are still in the end of the day focusing on the profit. They are in there also for society, but they are still focusing on profits. And there's a lot of debate also about this in the ecosystem. Are you only for the profits? Are you impact first, etc., or impact second? There's a lot of debate also in that. And that also holds us sometimes back to really work together on the SDGs, I think.
Yeah, and in this, do you notice a big difference between the big corporates and like smaller startups, or are they all kind of struggling with the same issues?
Now you see some small startups really, they are all only really on the SDGs or only impact. So that's, of course, that's the whole social enterprise movement. They are really the strongest believers, I think, in that area. And some corporates, they start to do more and more, but of course they come from another angle. They come more from the profit, the shareholder background. So that is, but they are both really important, because the big corporates, also in The Hague itself, our big corporates, if they invest more money in the SDGs, that would definitely help. But the young generation, if you put them in contact with some of those companies, they even want not to be associated with those companies.
Yeah.
So that's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, the diehards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Koos. Elina, can you share a little bit on this? So the challenges and the lessons learned.
Yeah, well, so of course, as a campaign, our mission is mainly to stimulate municipalities to achieve the SDGs. Well, of course, mentioned already, because of COVID, the municipalities were also overflown with issues because of Corona delays, extra tasks they received, and how to then keep that focus on achieving the SDGs. So I think that the main challenge here, the biggest struggle of the last year, was getting the SDGs embedded in local policy and not treating it as a separate trajectory, or a trajectory which only asks a municipality to put on the icons, but really embedding them in the policy. And I think that municipalities do get in some practical difficulties here, because we see a lot that the SDGs are given to one policy officer in one department, who then is tasked with spreading the word to the whole municipal organization, which is of course an enormous task. How can you make sure that everyone is involved and knows about it? And there we see that it really helps when the mayor and the aldermen and alderwomen really communicate externally, but also internally about the SDGs. And when the SDGs are written into policies that are used anyway, in social policies and environmental and economic. So I think that's really important. And I think the lesson learned last year is also that some municipalities have embraced the SDGs even within the COVID crisis as a way to keep that focus on the future we want to reach. So, for example, the municipality of Os has really embrace the SDGs to try to have a broad understanding of COVID issues. So, for example, when new measures were taken, they used the SDGs to really as a checklist to see whether a certain measure, what impact would it have on gender issue, or what impact would it have on youth, for example, and they found that very useful. So that's a struggle, but also a lesson learned, and it's important to embed in policy.
Yeah, that's great. Sort of trying to build back better, already thinking in the world past the pandemic, hopefully. Yeah, thank you. And Alex, can you share a little bit about this? You're a recent SDG house, but perhaps there are already any lessons you can share with us.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think it's important to remember as well, you know, you mentioned these global challenges, of course, the pandemic, it's still with us, the climate change, rising inequalities and others. It's important to remember that there has been a growing realization, not just this year, and just not right now, but over the last few years, that we all need to do something about it. It all affects us. And you know, these are shared challenges. They require shared solutions. And it was not a given a few years ago. So that's already one big step forward, I think, that this is moving. And, you know, sadly, the pandemic is accelerating this. This is kind of the silver lining of that as well. So this realization is growing, and people and organizations in The Hague and beyond are working on their piece of the puzzle to solve these challenges, to change. And we need to find ways to work together, you know, and cooperate. And that's why we became an SDG house. To use the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as this framework, this language, this common language, where we can better connect these different pieces of the puzzles towards solving these common challenges. And yeah, we just launched as an SDG house. We are starting to use that language, and we're developing activities to support this connection that I'm mentioning. But I want to go back as well to some of the things that were said. It's true. I mean, 11% of the people in this group said, you know, to the poll, SDG what? I think if you poll the general public, or if I look at our ecosystem, our community, our target groups, professionals in the peace and justice sector, I think quite a few would answer SDG what. So that's another role that we have to tackle head front at the moment. This understanding. And then we can continue with our connecting the dots and finding each other and supporting the collaboration. That's what the hub is going to do this year.
Yeah, that's great. I think you're already making a bit of a bridge to the final question I would like to ask all of you, which is how can even more cooperation be achieved in working on the SDGs, and then particularly in The Hague, and with the different organizations that are present here. So this was the same question we asked everybody in the breakout rooms to also discuss. So I would like to ask you now, and this time, can I start with Koos to mention a little bit about this? So how can we cooperate even more?
Yes, and I think if you see already who's here, I think we have to make it more visible. So I know the Humanity Hub is, for example, also planning to do more, I think, on events and each SDG, that we cover that better. But if you see, I really want to see more of a cooperation between, if you see, for example, SDG 6 or the SDG on water, on energy, that we maybe bring then the organizations working on that SDG together. I think we can do that. We have to make it more visible and bring the community better together, and also people in the city itself that want to be involved in those discussions. But yeah, if you see already there's so much knowledge also. If we have the Museon with how you bring that to the people, I think, yeah, we should be able to combine those forces and not try to do it all on ourselves. I think that's a really important criteria for the way forward, to really make the SDGs more tangible also for the people in the city of The Hague.
Yeah, so
and
perhaps,
the businesses for me.
Of course. So perhaps to build a bit on the expertise of everybody. I think we here already have quite a broad group. Thank you. Elina, can you share a bit of your insights on this? How can we cooperate even more? Do you agree with what Koos is saying?
Yeah, actually, that was also something I was thinking about, that it should be really much more visible in the city. The Hague is a global goals city, has committed to achieving that agenda, because that would allow many more citizens and other organizations to tap into that and put in their help to achieving the SDGs. And also, I think it would be there are a couple of things. I think, for example, communicating about the SDGs on the municipal website, for example, because I was looking at it also in the search bar, and I think there is some progress could be made, and also perhaps a joint local SDG action plan in which the municipality, together with relevant local stakeholders, makes a plan on how to achieve certain goals with very concrete ways to get there, and trying to see how everyone can put in their share towards achieving the goal. And one last thing I was also thinking about is that a lot of municipalities also work with local SDG platforms in which local stakeholders work together with the municipality to work on awareness, so that you as a municipality don't have to do it on yourself, but that you can really make use of all the energy presence. So that's something I would also recommend, I think.
Great, thank you, Elina. Well, then I would like to ask Floor about her view on this. How can we cooperate more? And as a city, I think Elina gave us a few tips what we can do more. What are your views on this?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question, Charlotte. So thank you for asking that, and also thank you for your suggestions, Elina. I believe we have a talk later on this week, so we can talk it into further detail. I believe that here in The Hague, we have loads of different organizations and people who are working here who all bring together so much knowledge and expertise with them. And I really see it as an opportunity for The Hague to make sure that all the knowledge and expertise will benefit the citizens of The Hague. And I think a nice example of how this can be done is the project we have together with an NGO, which is called HIL. And the project is called Access to Justice. And the NGO HIL has carried out research on the access to justice of the citizens here in The Hague. And I think it's a project where the municipality really uses the expertise of an organization that's present in The Hague to achieve an SDG together. And I mean, this is just one example, but I truly believe more corporations and alliances like this can be formed in the future. And as a municipality, we are definitely open to these kinds of initiatives.
Great, thank you, Flor. Alex, can I ask you, how can we cooperate even more?
Well, we saw, and it was repeated already, The Hague has, all the SDGs are being tackled in The Hague. Now it's a matter of communicating, putting a spotlight on these, connecting. So we will be developing activities to support that, to facilitate this. We need more transparency on who's working on what. So it's very simple things such as, you know, tagging within our community and ecosystem, who is working what SDGs, having a sort of common platform where we can find that. That will be already one step. But let me go back as well to the program that we just launched. I think the SDG House Network is an example of that such a collaboration that can happen on a national level. Of course, such collaboration should happen locally, nationally, internationally. But the SDG House Network was set up by an SDG house in Amsterdam, the KIT Amsterdam, which we joined, and it's already a great step towards that. And one of the first projects that we are part of is the SDG traineeship program. So the idea there is to mobilize 500 students, Dutch students, and to make them work as part of the traineeship in 100 organizations to tackle an SDG-related challenge that organization has. And 500 students, 100 organizations, that is a goal for the next 2 years. The deadline, I think, was for the first cycle already passed. I think more than 200 students already signed up for it. So we are very well on the way to reach the 500 students within 2 years. And this hopefully will mobilize companies and other organizations more to think along the lines of how can they achieve SDGs, how can they change the way they work to fit the SDGs. And another thing I want to mention as well, because it's related to another speaker here, Friso from Museon, we have started exploring with Museon the possibility, maybe in the future, of connecting the public-facing activities that Museon has with professionals from this peace and justice sector that we have in our community, to find other ways of connecting around SDGs with different target groups. So yeah, to summarize, communicating about SDGs, connecting people, and I think communicating is the key word here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Alex. And I think with the SDG traineeship, I saw that there are quite some people asking questions about involving students. So, and I saw that that the link to the traineeship was also shared, so that might be an interesting opportunity to do that. Friso, how can we cooperate more? What are your views?
I think that Alex already made the point that we are cooperating here in The Hague, and that Museon is one of the founders of the SDG House Network. And that is we were really looking to other partners to share the adventure of finding the solutions, as our mission is saying. For a viable planet. And so finding solutions for a viable planet and sharing the adventure of it is really what we were looking at. So there's that Museon, together with Omniversum, is a place where we can function as a platform, as a public space where parties that are, normally speaking, not reaching out to the general public can perform, so to speak. And we can really facilitate the showcasing of innovations, for instance, or the discussion or the debate can be done here. So we are a free space in the international zone that can be used as such. And examples of how we have done this before is that in September we shared with the municipality Smart at Sea in Scheveningen at the beach. So we were serving the public program there, talking with school children, So things like that we have been doing, and I think the traineeship is another thing that was already mentioned before. So we are seeking trainees that would help us to really elaborate on the educational program on the SDGs, for instance, for the VMBO in the Netherlands, which could be in Museum, but could also be a generic thing for to be shared elsewhere. We would like to look into the business case behind the cooperation on the Sustainable Development Goals for ourselves, but also for others as a model, and to, as I said, showcasing innovations. That could be also something we strive for, and then use the SDG traineeship for it, for instance. So just a few examples there.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Friso. That was my final question for the panel. And of course, we always, you set certain times, but it always goes a bit up over that. But we have a few more minutes left. So I would like to ask any audience members if they have questions. I saw there was quite some in the chat already. And one of them I found quite interesting, which we didn't really discuss yet, was about the indicators that have been established for the SDGs. And what are the panel members' thoughts on the role of the indicators? How can we measure progress? So I don't know if there's anyone who would like to share something on that. You know, Koos, you mentioned something about impact.
Yeah, so we build a database, and what we did in the database is we of course we look in the core of the company. We make a difference between the core and the side of the business model of the companies, and they have to be in the core of the company. So if you leave that out of the company, there is no company or no business model anymore, then it's really dedicated to that SDG. But this is really, of course, the most difficult part of building such a database, that all the parties in the database are really working on solving the SDGs. But that's what, and in the investors world, I see there's a lot of, I think there are 30 or 40 ways to measure impact at the moment, standards. So there's a lot of debate on how you measure that. But the SDGs really help, although they are of course really broad. It is. I see it comes more also in the investors world now, so it is helping us. Although, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, great. And Elina, perhaps you can share a little bit on this, because you have made a guideline, right, for cities with which indicators are, especially for cities, interesting. Can you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we made we have one brochure which specifies per SDG what actions and activities municipalities can take to achieve the goal, and we're also working on a way on how to measure that, measure the progress. And it's quite a tough cookie to crumble, so to say, because it's the UN indicators are often not so applicable to the Dutch municipal context, or sometimes they measure things that you as a municipal, as a mayor and alderman with your policy you don't have influence on. So that's what we're translating to local indicators. We're doing that with a group of interested municipalities, and we've been working on that for quite some time. And we're now at the point where we have developed the indicator set, and one extra time have to review it to make sure that it's all right. And our ambition is to translate that into a monitor that's available for all municipalities to look at. But the first step is this local indicator set, and then we will see how we can make it available online for everyone.
Thank you, Elina. Friso had to leave us to prevent a night at the museum, because he was at the Museon location, and they were closing the doors. Is there anybody from the audience who would like to ask a question by putting on your microphone to one of the panelists, or a more broader question? We have a few minutes left, so let's make use of the time. Sure, if anybody has a question left. Perhaps because there was a lot of things about students in in the chat, and we already talked about the SDG traineeship, but perhaps anybody can share a little bit more about involving students with the SDGs, or how we can cooperate more, perhaps on that.
Yeah, maybe just to answer this. So we already explained the SDG traineeship. The first cycle, I think the application is, or the deadline already passed. The next one will be from September onwards. So this is one way of how to involve and communicate SDGs to the Dutch students population. But as a Humanity Hub, our main target group, or at least our main constituents, are professionals in the peace and justice sector. And we've seen, when we still had the chance of having events in this beautiful space here, that we always had tons of attention from students, and we always tried to find ways of involving them. So this today, actually, I mean, this is maybe also kind of a final message. It's just one of the first steps of us talking to each other on what to do together to achieve the SDGs in The Hague. Some of the first few steps, us as a Humanity Hub, in developing ourselves as an SDG house. And we approach all this very much as a co-creation process with our community. So our development will be co-created. We will see where the importance should lie with our members. And many of these sessions or many of these activities are also open to others within the ecosystem and the public. So it's an invitation to join us for these next few steps as well, because personally, and I don't think the hub yet is SDG fluent. So we're getting there, and we're hoping that you can join us on that journey, and students, of course, as well.
Great, thank you, Alex. Well, we're at exactly 5 o'clock, and I see that already some people have to leave. So I'm not sure if anybody from the panel would like to say in one sentence a final thing, or something you've learned today. I don't know if somebody wants to do that. I at least thought it was a very interesting session. I've made some notes, and I've written down some things we can do as a city, but also as this whole peace and justice community. So I would also like to invite the audience. If we haven't answered your questions yet, or you want to know a little bit more, please reach out. You can always reach out to me. I think it goes for everybody in this panel as well. I mean, this was about cooperation, so let's continue after this session in another way, with maybe a little bit more time. So let me end on thanking everybody for being there. Thank you very much.